Start the recording. Just for clarity again, this recording is going to be about one way for you to organize your research paper. And if you want to think of it as the way or sort of the basic template, that's fine. I don't know what your high school experience was like. I don't even know if you've had a couple years of college before taking this class. Sometimes that happens. So I don't know what sort of history you have with writing research papers. And um, sometimes you might have had already some experience there, and you already have some strategies under your belt, uh, or in your toolbox for organizing your thoughts and presenting your research in an essay, right? But if you don't have that, or if you would like a little more direction, I want to give you a basic way to do it. And here's really what I want you to remember. If the basic way that I outline on this whiteboard in a little bit works for you, then I would say, go for it. It demystifies the process, and it could really help you get this thing done. So if it works for you, then I would say use it. Definitely use it. If however you have another idea you want to play around with, you want to explore, you want to experiment a little bit, and maybe you're thinking of opening in a different way, or simply arranging your paper maybe with some different parts, or having a different sort of closing or something like that, right? I would say do whatever you feel comfortable doing that will help you grow as a writer. And if that's what you want to do, then you can go ahead and deviate what I'm going to show, or um, you know explore other organizations of your paper. And just know that when you submit your work, I'm going to start with your title. I'm going to go through your work, and if it makes sense to me, if it keeps my attention, if it creates interest, maintains it, rewards it, you're going to get all your points, even if it doesn't look exactly like what I'm sharing with you here. Okay. um, so let's go ahead and get started. And one thing I really wanted to do now is just have a chance to talk with you and explain to you this template, because this template is really what some of the videos in these work folders are talking about. And so when a video in one of these work folders refers to a schematic or a review of literature, I want to just kind of clear it all up and make sure we understand what I'm saying there. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and use one of my favorite, diagrams to represent the essay, and that's that vertical rectangle. All right. So let's see. Here we go. This is your paper. And if you want to know some of the very specific elements, like, hey, Dr. Horan, how many sources do we have to use? How many words? How many words do we have to have? What's the minimum word count? Just go ahead and go to work folder 8, lesson 8, and open that up, and you can see the basic requirements that might interest you in seeing that. But in terms of generally speaking, this is what I'm hoping to see. Okay, I would like a two-tier title. All right, so I'm putting that up here, two-tier title, which remember is a main title and a colon and then a subtitle. All right, and by this time, I've hoped you've run into a couple two-tier titles. If you want some examples, then you should go back into the citation exercises and look at the journals that I provided. I know you had to work only with the first pages of those journals, but you can see the titles, and those are two-tier titles. And I believe some of the books that I had there also um, had two-tier titles on them as well. So I want you to go ahead and experiment with that. Here's another chance to come up with a two-tier title. The more practice you have making these things, the better you're going to get. All right. Now, I want us to think about all of this in three basic sections. All right. So we're going to have a section here, and then we're going to have a section here, and then the third one is down here. So I gave this a good bit of space. It's not as big as the middle section, right? And then your closing is the smallest. Now, obviously, we can think of this in terms of the beginning, the middle, and the end, right? And beginning, middle, end. And as obvious as that is, I don't want to miss an opportunity to remind you that it's not simplistic. It's simple and it's very clear to us. But if you spend time thinking about how we view things, how we want to see when it begins, how we want to see when it ends, how that gives us a sense of control, a sense of comfort as we interact with it. How would you like to have a class that you didn't know exactly when it began and you don't know if it's ever going to end? And you don't know how to assess the middle point if you're progressing or not. This very basic thing is very important to us. It really is. Let's not forget that it's at play here as well. All right, and you know how to begin things and you know how to end them. I don't want you to lack the confidence here. Think of how you begin conversations with people. Think of how you end them. Think of how many times you've heard a song begin, how many times you've heard, have seen a movie begin, how many times you've read the beginning of a web article or a magazine article, or you've heard the beginning of a lecture, and then how does it close? You know the strategies. You might not be able to, like, right now, if I were to call on one of you and say, hey, Jerry, give me 4 ways of closing, you might not be able to give me the language, but it's in you. And I bet if I gave you at least an hour, you could come up with them. You could just come up with names as far as different strategies, because you know how to begin, you know how to end, and you know how to work the middle. So just remember, that's essentially what you're doing here, okay? But when it comes to academic writing, now I'm going to put that up here, okay? I'm gonna remind us that this is academic writing. I'll put that right here. It's a format that's really been developed by your professors, and by hundreds of professors, and it's sort of a natural developing. It's the natural way to organize something if you're writing out of research and you're going to present your work to other researchers, okay, that are strapped for time. There are certain things we expect to see so that we can know that we're meeting the expectations, all right, for other readers, for other professors. And so this really is a research for the professors thing. And many of your professors, maybe not necessarily at a community college, but in general, professors are writing and researching for publication. And so they are trying to craft their thoughts into a sort of a text, some kind of text that they're going to present to the community. All right. So that's going to be the reason for some of the stuff you see up here. Okay. Now, as you this first section is divided into a couple parts here, right? And the first part right here is pretty kind of self-evident. It's your hook. So a lot of people call this the hook. I never really did like that term, but it's simply the immediate opening. I know that's kind of hard to see there, but that's immediate, the immediate opening. And I want you to ask you, how would you, what is literally the first and second sentence of your essay going to be? Are you going to start with a question? Because that's a technique. You start with a question, or you might start with a story, right? You might try to interest somebody by presenting them one of these weird, stranger than fiction thing that really is easy to engage with. And your reader all of a sudden gets wrapped up into this real life story, and before they know it, they're into your topic and that sort of thing, right? It could be a stunning statistic. For example, what would you say if I told you that according to multiple sources, I can list one right now. I can list the name and I forgot the author's name, but The Sociopath Next Door, that's the book. And the statistic is that 1 out of 5 people sometime in their life are going to struggle with with mental illness, with clinical mental illness. Isn't that stunning to you? One out of 5. You know, there, you know, there's 7 of us here, so 1.5 of us. Um, is that statistic true? You know, how old is that? How did that get formed? But those are secondary questions, right? Because I would have the right to start with that statistic if I found it in print and it seemed like it was coming out of good research, right? So that might be a way to provide an immediate opening. But what I would like you to do after that is to really clarify for your reader what your topic is. Clarify topic. Now you might say, well, just look at my title. You should be able to see what my topic is, and I would be, yes, you're right. But you know, the academic paper format is sort of it's a sort of an expanding, redundant experience. In other words, think of think of a microscope that you're looking at something and you can see it under the 10 power, you can see it under the 20 power lens, the 40 power lens, the 60 power lens, and you're looking at the same thing, but it's just getting bigger. You're getting more detail as you go into it. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of how it is here. You give them a very quick view of the whole thing. That the two-tier title ought to really kind of definitely, it should tell your reader what your topic is and kind of what your thesis is, all wrapped up there in that one title. And then the beginning here, right here, should tell them these things. It should tell them again, what is your topic, and pretty soon it's going to talk about some other things that the middle part is just going to expand on after it's been given in sort of a condensed version up in the top part. Okay, so let me tell you why this is. Okay, let's say that I'm researching nutrition. And I don't actually know. Well, maybe I'm talking about the food industry, and maybe I'm looking at packaging and transporting of food. Maybe I'm looking at how we've, over the last 200 years, we've moved food production and food consumption, right, from the um, the non-urban environs, like the farming areas, but we bring it all into an urban center, and a lot of how we look at food and eat food has to do with how it's been grown in terms of its eventually how it's going to be shipped, how it's going to be refrigerated, how it's going to be ripened, what its shelf life is like. So looking at all of this, right? That's my research. And if I type that in, right, I guarantee you, if I go into Tri-C's library and I use the databases right, and I type in these keywords, nutrition, food industry, consumption, whatever, I'm going to get tens of thousands of hits because people are really doing a lot of writing on this. I mean, I might get hundreds of thousands of results. All right, ranging everywhere from a book review to a newspaper article to a full-fledged PhD dissertation to a book. I might get so much material. I guarantee you that I can't go through it all. What's the very first thing I'm going to go through? As I get my results back from hitting search, right, in the databases, the first thing I'm going to go through are the titles. And that's all I'm going to look at, because if I have to go through 5,000 titles in 3 hours or 2 hours, I'm not, or 4 hours, I'm scrolling, man. I am skimming. I'm waiting to see the title that seems to suggest to me that it's very close to what I'm writing on. You see what I'm saying? That's why that title has to be packed, because the title is often the only thing other researchers would ever see of your work if your work were to get published and put into a database. Now, you might be saying to me, right? You might be saying, hey, Dr. Horn, I mean, what you keep on talking about this publishing stuff. I'm never going to do that. And, why do we keep on? And I'm like, yeah, I understand. Maybe that some of you are going to, but, maybe some of you aren't. But thinking along those lines helps you understand why the research paper takes the form it does, and why your professors are requiring you to use certain things and to do certain things like do APA and MLA and all that, because all that is coming from this mill, this process, this publication thing. And whether you're involved with it or not directly, you're involved with it indirectly, because that's how they teach writing. They had to learn how to write like that in grad school. Talking about your professors, some of them are still trying to write like that. Some of them are editing work like that, like yours truly. I'm an editor of a academic journal that's been around since 2008. It's fairly rewarding. I don't make more than $150 a year on it, but I've learned a lot, and um, I'm still involved with this stuff. So your professors are thinking along these lines, even if they don't realize it or not, because some of them don't know how to explain the backstory of why they're have their assignments this way. They're just copying the stuff they learned from their own professors, who were copying the stuff they learned from their own there's there's a whole long chain here. This is tradition. And so I'm kind of trying to show you the background story here. All of this is designed for that other researcher that you'll never meet, that's scrolling through the databases, and they might find your work, and if they think it's anywhere close to what they're researching, they're going to give it a second look. But the only reason they would ever do that is your title caught them, because the title was the only thing that showed up along those 10,000 hits that they had. And it was on page 3. And there it was. For 1 second, they saw that title. 1 second. That's why the title is actually a work of art. You got to figure out how to give them your main topic, your subtopic, and your thesis. By main topic, I would mean something like nutrition, like going with this example I'm talking about. By subtopic, I would mean like the focus of it, right? If nutrition is huge, what am I going to write about in nutrition, man? If I don't focus on something, I'm going to end up writing an encyclopedia. I'll never get done. So in the general topic of nutrition, I might actually be focusing on the supermarket, right? The way supermarkets teach us how to think of food, right? And so at that point, I got to put that up there. I got to put that in my title, and because others, if they can understand that, the more information I can get up there without going overboard, right? Because that still is just the title. The more that my work is going to get a second look. They're gonna move it to the side. They're gonna open it up quickly. They're gonna stop their scrolling, and they're gonna open on the title to see if they can get the abstract. Okay. Now, the abstract in academic writing is a summary of the whole paper, right? And sometimes it's put right underneath the title. In fact, I think that one of the examples I've given you to work with for the citation exercises, I think one of them has an abstract. You should take a look at that. Here, I'm not asking for an abstract. I'm saying in this first part of your paper, which we can call the whole thing, we can call the introduction, right? I'll put that up there. Intro. That's kind of like your abstract, because you know what? If that person opens up your paper and you don't have an abstract, you know what they're going to do? They're going to read the first 3 paragraphs. They're going to read the first 4 paragraphs. They're going to do some skimming. They know what words to look for. All right. And what they want to find is a review of literature. Okay. Right in here. ROL is review of literature. And then they want to see your contribution and schematic. Okay, so you got literally a couple sentences up here to try to get somebody's attention. Then you want to really explain and clarify your topic. You want to provide a review of what other people have said about your topic in general, and not hundreds and hundreds of other people, just 3 or 4 for our purposes, maybe 3 or 4 general voices that have talked about your topic. And then you want to explain at the bottom here of this intro how exactly you fit, right? Given the voices that you've just summarized, how is your voice unique? How is it actually a contribution, right? How are you adding to those voices? And now the schematic then is also is an overview of how the rest of the paper is going to, what the main points of the rest of the paper are, how it's organized. And for the schematic, it could be something like, for the following, I will organize my thoughts according to three basic principles. First, I'll talk about, then I'll mention, then I'll close with it. It could be like an outline, but in prose form, okay? Because remember, what you're doing is you're allowing someone who stopped because the title caught their attention. You're allowing them to see your whole idea in miniature right here in the intro. Okay. Now, let's see. Let me talk a little bit more about the review of literature, okay? Because I know that can be a confusing topic, but I guarantee you, if you get this, you'll have a head start on your junior and senior work, and even your master's level work, because I don't know, it's hard to see the future, right? And I would ask you to sort of suspend judgment here, because you might say, well, I'm not going to get my master's, right? But see, you don't know yet. Tell me that in 3 years. What if all the light bulbs go on and you find, man, you really can do this, and in fact, you eventually want to get your master's, and you do, and in graduate level work, that's when this becomes very, very important. Okay, so what in the world is a review of literature, and how does it tie into a contribution? So what I'm going to put here on the side here, okay, is I'm going to put, this is a conversation, and you have to find your place at the table, okay? I'm going to put right here, conversation. Okay, a conversation. And then find your seat. I messed up on that, but seat, find your seat. Okay. And I like to bring in this notion of the conversation, because we're all good at it. You might not choose to join too many conversations, but because of where you are right now as a human being, that's lived among other people, what this is, how it works, how it falls apart, how it can be great, how it can be horrible, right? Okay. But the notion here for research is that if you're to write about something like nutrition, okay, there are other researchers out there that are writing on nutrition. I mean, I guarantee you I can find an article on nutrition and its benefits on grades, right? How it affects students. I can find work on nutrition and long-term health, preventative, right? It's sort of a, what a low salt diet can do for you if you adhere to it in your 20s and 30s, how that can benefit you when you're in your 50s and 60s concerning blood pressure, right? I know I can find information about, say, the packaging industry and what that does to the quality of our food, and maybe how our current quest for protein is taking on different forms in terms of lab grown meat and all that. And you know what? Maybe I'm not even going to write about any of that. Maybe my own approach is nutrition and supermarkets, right? But what I want to put up here is I want to give the reader just a general overview of what some of the main voices are writing about, so that when the reader figures out what I'm writing about, they realize that I actually am adding to the conversation. So again, I want you to think about how a conversation works. Let's say you walk into a room and there's a table there, right? And 5 or 6 people are sitting around the table and they're talking about a certain topic. And sometimes, let's say they're all talking, not at once, but they're all involved, right? They're all sharing their thoughts. And you're just in the doorway. You haven't decided to sit down yet, but you're listening. The people at that conversation, I guarantee you there's not going to be anybody there that refuses to talk about that topic. So anytime they want to say something, they talk about space travel or something, whereas the topic at hand is maybe China's growing military aggression in the middle, in the Chinese Sea or something, or it could be, I don't know, it could be the upcoming presidential race, and if they're taking part of that conversation, that's what they're talking about. You're not going to find someone else talking about, current trends in home decorating or something. So they tend to stay on topic, right? I mean, this is a no-brainer. That's what, unless they want to change the topic, but then there's a strategy to that, right? But the other thing that no one is going to be doing is no one's going to be just repeating someone else, right? Like the game a 5-year-old younger brother plays with his 12-year-old older sister, right? Or something, where you have a younger kid messing with an adult, right? Where they just copy word for word what the adult says, or what another friend says, and it eventually drives somebody crazy, right? They're like, "Stop copying me! Stop copying me! I mean it! I mean it!" And we know how that game is played, and the reason we call it a game is because it is a game. No one takes that seriously, right? So you know that you really do not belong at that table if all you are doing is copying what someone else says. Now, this is where things get a little bit tricky, because unless you've been kind of challenged with this before, you might be in the habit of just writing informational papers where you go out, you find sources, you come back, you put them together, and then you turn them into your teacher. But in essence, you aren't taking part of the conversation, you see, because you're just copying what other people have said, putting it into your own words, and then giving it to your teacher who's not part of the conversation either. So that's just a scholastic activity. That's like a school assignment that helps the teacher see that you're spelling things correctly, that you can use quotation marks right, that you can reference your sources, but it is not training you to actually become involved in the conversation. That's why I want to challenge you a little bit more with this and say, look, the review of literature is your chance to pick the conversation and to present it to your reader and say, look, there are like 3 voices here that are right, or 4 voices that are writing about this topic. Now, this major voice writes about this. This one wrote about that. This one wrote about that. Now, guess what? I want to write about this too. And here's what I'm going to say. And this is my own voice. When you present your contribution, once you present it in light of the review of literature that you provided, it should be pretty easy for your reader to see that you have a unique idea, right? For example, let me keep on working with this notion about nutrition. So there's work there on nutrition and school performance. There's work on nutrition and long-term health benefits. There's work on nutrition and the worker side of things. For example, the meat industry really, you know, privileges output. When you get on the chain, man, and that meat is going on that chain, you have people working to cut that meat and to process it, right? And what sort of accidents happen in the workplace? That is a very important question, and that has been long looked into, starting from Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, all the way to the present. So I know people are writing about that. I know people are writing about nutrition in terms of sugar, okay, and what sugar does to young kids. Now, sugar is it's sort of its own focus. You can focus on sugar and the unborn, the effect on the unborn. If a mother is carrying a fetus and she eats a lot of sugar, well, how does that affect the unborn? There's research there. There's research definitely on sugar and diabetes, sugars and obesity, sugar in profit-making industries like Coke. To what extent? How does Coke manage its sugar problem with the public? How do they market it away? How do they hide it away? There's that's a research topic in its own, right? But I can be referring to all this, but I would be mentioning that in my review of literature, because when I talk about what I have come up with, I want people to see that it's unique. You see what I'm saying? Which means that the sources that I talk to about in the review of literature, they're not necessarily the sources that I use down in my paper. The what I would call the support section, all right, the expansion of my idea. The expansion and explanation of that's an F, idea. Okay. So I've got something for you. I believe that I actually could write a paper. Well, I don't know. I haven't done the research, but let's just say that I decided to see if the way supermarkets are actually designed influence us in terms of hunger, because we know that. Have you heard the saying that don't ever the advice someone might say, don't ever go shopping when you're hungry or whatever? You're gonna buy more. You're gonna, and that just kind of makes sense, right? I mean, if you're hungry, you probably are gonna buy more. But I wonder if anybody has actually done the research on that in terms of like an experiment. I wonder what the numbers actually are. Do you end up buying 7% more, 10% more, 12% more, 20% more? And how do you determine whether somebody is hungry? Like if I were to ask you right now, let me know if you're hungry or not. And on a scale from 1 to 10, you might say, well, yeah, I'm a 6 right now in terms of hunger. And someone else might say, well, I'm a 6 as well. But how do I know the sixes are the same? You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of stuff that, that could be unpacked there, that can be substantiated. But what I'm getting at is you've heard that notion, right? Going shopping when you're hungry, is going to make you pay more. Well, I want to know whether or not the supermarket is actually designed to make you hungry, even if you go in there when you're not hungry. Okay. Do any of you know the answer to that question? The question is, are supermarkets designed to make you hungry so that even if you go in there not hungry, you somehow begin to get hungry when you're in there, and thus you spend a little bit more? And that's why I think it would be a good research question, because I don't think you have the answer to that. And I don't think I can find the answer online. I don't think there's been any work done on this. That's what I'm saying. That's why at the very beginning, when you were choosing your topics, I was asking you to try to start with a curious question that had some complexity to it, and then to see if anybody has answered the question. Because if nobody has answered the question, you've got a potential contribution, right? You've got a potential original voice, right? But what if I actually went and mapped out 10 supermarkets for this class, right? That would have been a little bit of extra work, but I'm willing to do that because I might hit a gold nugget here. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be earth shattering. It's not going to be Einstein-esque, but I'm telling you, if I do this right, it could probably be publishable. And for you as an undergraduate to be writing stuff that's actually publishable, that's huge. That's definitely going to help you get into grad school with a couple scholarships. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I might have put in the extra work. I go shopping anyway, at least once a week. Why don't I go shopping to different stores and try to map them out, right? And what if, as I did my profile, like we did with the superheroes, right? If I did my profile on the supermarket stores, I realized that 7 out of 10, 70% are going to start you off with, as you walk in the door, you're going to hit drinks like water, soda, they're just going to be beverages. It's like the beverages are right there, And as you make your way through the beverages, you get to the bakery section, but not the sweets. This bakery section is like bread, buns, biscuits, tortillas, And then once you get past that, what if once you're like 20 minutes into the store and just following the natural wide walkways that you are suggested to use? I mean, if you wanted to, you can just go anywhere you wanted to in the store, but if you just follow the architecture, right? You probably are being led a certain way. And what if 20 minutes in, you find yourself with the vegetables and the meat and the protein, And then after 30 or 40 minutes, you're in the sweets, the desserts, and then by an hour, you're done, you're ready to check out. Okay. My question to you is, if I could actually show you that 7 out of 10 supermarkets are designed that way, I think I would move it beyond just coincidence. I would say, hey, this has design to it. And that's what I would provide here, like a data table, right? My research. Now, there is a sense in which this example I'm giving you is kind of a little scary, because you might be thinking, man, I didn't do anything like that. I didn't go out and do a survey. I didn't go out and collect data like that. And I'm like, yeah, relax. Don't worry about it. Okay. Do what you can as far as the information that you find from other areas, right? But I'm just doing this as my own example, right? Because when it comes to research, sometimes you can go out and find it. You can dig it out of the ground. You can go to the field and grow it, right? You can go out into the field. You can do field work. So sometimes you make the info, but sometimes you just collect it and you put it together in original ways. Or it's really or, because you can do both, right? Or you collect it and creatively arrange it. Okay. So sometimes you go out and you read and you watch and you listen and you start collecting like little sound bites, right? Little facts. And this one was said by that person. This one came out of this study and that, and you didn't make them. You just found them, but you put them together in an original way to support an original idea. It's like Legos, right? You don't, if you do it this way, you're not like building the Lego pieces, you're collecting them. But somebody else made them, sure, but you went on and got the pieces, and then you put them together into your own creation, right? And that's this part right here is where you explain and expand your idea, and this is where I might present this information about the supermarket arrangement. And then I might say, another part in here might be like, once I show you how they're arranged, then I could say, doesn't this resemble a restaurant meal? Like when you go into a restaurant, you get led to your table, you go through the doors, and there's this architecture to the seating area, right? And what's then you get your water, your drink, you get your bread, your appetizers, the light stuff. Then in the middle of it all, you get your main meal, which is your vegetables, your protein, your meat, whatever, right? And after that, it's the sweet stuff if you want a dessert. And finally, at the end, you pay for it. And I'm like, the same template that's in a supermarket, if you allow the building to direct your shopping, that is following the rhythm of a restaurant meal. And this might explain why some people that walk into the supermarket who aren't hungry are hungry by the time they come out, because they're in a situation that reminds them of the meal. Now, I just said something that I have no data for, right? I said that might explain why some people who are not hungry when they go into a supermarket might be kind of hungry when they come out, right? And how would I support that? Right? Maybe I need to see if someone has researched that. I don't think so. I don't think anybody's done any work on that. So at that point, I might have to do a little survey or something and try to bring in some more information here, right? But that's what I'm doing with the middle of the paper. The middle of the paper is where I'm just expanding on my idea. Now, the closing, you don't really have to do a lot of heavy lifting on the closing. People are not expecting you to come up with a whole new paper. They're not expecting you to introduce a new heavy issue. They're expecting you to wrap it up, and I'm going to let you experiment with the closing. I would just say, like, for the example I'm giving you here, a closing that I would use is I would call for further research. For me specifically, right? Because here, if I actually did this, I would have to say at the bottom down here, I would say, look, I need to qualify this, right? I looked at only 10 supermarkets. So in order for this to really be established as something that is truly at play in the food industry and supermarket design, we need to do a bigger study. And just mention that. Say we need a bigger study. And people who know how to read research are going to recognize that as you're passing the baton to someone else to say, hey, knock yourself out. If you want to take my idea and do it with 100 supermarkets, that's what we need to do. Would you do that? Go right ahead. I can't do it because I'm out of time, I'm out of resources, whatever, right? But you might call for further research. There are other things you could do in the closing. I don't want to get into that right now, but this is kind of the idea in a nutshell. Now, listen, I don't want you to get panicky because some of you might have a topic, and the way you've read and worked on the topic, it actually is going to fit this really nicely. Others, your topic is not going to really let you do this because at the beginning, you picked a topic that wasn't going to play ball with you all the way through. And you didn't see it then, but you might see it now. And what I want you to do is I want you to chalk that up as a learning experience, turn in your work. You'll be fine. I'm not going to let you blow your grade. You're going to get a decent grade on the research paper, probably get all your points, and then move on. Remember this for your next class so that you can pick a better topic. And, there is just some core things that good writers always do. I mean, to make mistakes every now and then. I'm not saying they bat 100, 1,000 every time they're at plate, but a mature and successful writer is going to figure out things, some basic things. One is you got to know how to pick the right topics, the topics that are going to be manageable, that are going to be fertile and fruitful, and that are going to allow for layering and complexities and for creative rearrangement. and different angles of view, you know. So picking the right topic is huge, huge. Of course, you know the main rules, right? Create interest, maintain it, reward it. But that gets a whole lot easier when you pick the right topic. You pick the right topic, you create, maintain, and reward interest, you are going to get read. And that's another thing that really good writers do. They get read. So I want you to think about these things. I don't want you to go into panic mode. You've done a lot of work at this point, and many of you can just turn in something decent, and I'll give you a great grade. But if you want to really kind of tinker with what you got and see if you can put it into this format, especially with the review of lit and the schematic and the contribution, I think that would be a great challenge for you and something really worth knowing how to do if you even have a slightest bit of a notion that you might be headed for graduate work. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and open this up for some questions concerning this, and then we'll call it a night. Anybody with some thoughts or questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close the recording and let you all go your separate ways unless someone wants to hang around and talk with me. Just in that case, just stay connected and then either, um, you know, let me know through the chat or just open your mic and we can talk. All right. But if not, full speed ahead. Okay. And just remember, I'm here to help you grow as a writer. I'm here to help you uh, take your next step. And for some of you, your next step is really to try to work with this template. For some of you, your next step might have been right now, might be, well, thanks a lot, Dr. Horn. That's really nice to think about. I'm going to try to remember that. Right now, though, I'm stuck in with a topic that I really can't do it that way. I'm just going to turn in what I got, and I'll try to work this way my next opportunity to do this as a writer, which probably is going to be my next English class or something. So, hey, that's your next step. Take it and learn and just keep on growing. Don't ever stop trying to move forward in terms of your own education. Okay. So I'm going to stop the recording and then I'll talk to anyone who wants to hang around.